Incidentally, 16 kilometers an hour is the average speed of a cyclist in Amsterdam, because bicycle routes are designed to avoid traffic lights and to keep cyclists
Look at this
moving.
shit. There's a dedicated route for bicycles that cars are not allowed to go on. I have been driving in places where there is not infrastructure at all for cyclists, and I have absolutely hated the cyclists that I've encountered while I was in my car, but it's not even their fault. Like, you're blaming the victims of a problem. The fact that being in a car and having a cyclist next to you fucking sucks because like one wrong move and their head is smashed under your tire like a fucking melon is not because of the fact that they're bicycling. It's because of the fact that the infrastructure and the state don't make it easier for people to bicycle and safer for people to bike. If it was safer for them to bike, they wouldn't be in your goddamn way. It's so easy. It's so easy to think of these things. But cars have infected this country. It's a fucking plague. Bonk. This is why Tokyo is insanely well designed by OBF. I don't know much about this channel. It's literally the first video I've seen, but it seems chill. Here the video.
This is a blueprint of Shinjuku Station, the busiest public transportation hub in the world. This structure stretches 1 kilometer through the Shinjuku district and facilitates 3.6 million daily commuters.
That's a lot of people.
To go to different parts of Tokyo. On its 5 main levels, you'll find one of 3 major means of traveling. For those on the go, Shinjuku boasts 3 subway lines that connect it to sister districts like Shibuya, Minato, and Chiyoda, all within minutes. Tokyo is not just a city, it's a nation within a city. The population measures 37 million people, meaning it's the biggest megacity in the world. And when you consider the tourists and visitors from other parts of Japan, the numbers are even higher.
Can you imagine if every motherfucker in there had to have a car? That place would be a fucking shit show.
But despite the high population and never-ending movement, it has often been known as one of the safest cities in terms of infrastructure. City planners have not only found a way to make sure that the 3.9 billion yearly users who depend on the subway system get to where they need to go, but that they and others have alternative means of traveling through Tokyo on any given day. If you're walking, for example, each Tokyo district has what you need right around the corner. If not for a grocery store, there's tons of vending machines waiting for you. But while walking is convenient and an entirely viable option, 57% of travel in Tokyo is done through public transit, which can be compared to New York City's 58%, but that's where the comparisons end. Take a look at this 3D rendering of the Times Square 42nd Street subway station.
Majority of Japanese people don't drive, correct? Yeah, because it sucks to drive in Tokyo, because the city wants the people of the country not to drive. They want people to use public transit. They want people to walk. They want people to bike. They incentivize that you do these things, which are not only better for the environment, also better economically, also safer. There's so many benefits.
It's no Shinjuku, but it's part of a public transport system that is quite shockingly bigger than Tokyo's. Seriously, the New York City subway has 34 lines and 468 stations, all servicing 4 boroughs, namely...
So like, if you think about it, most American cities disincentivize, or make it impossible, really, disincentivize biking, disincentivize using public transit, and they very much incentivize using cars, which is literally the opposite of what you want to do if you want your city to be economically efficient and also to increase the quality of life of the people living in it. Like, you can have up to 15 minutes added just based off of traffic lights not accounting for traffic. Yeah, it's some fucked up shit.
But bigger doesn't always mean better, and that's definitely the case here. Because despite its size, it comes second to Tokyo's annual passenger frequency. This is possible because Tokyo's system, while much smaller, is way more efficient. It's the result of a necessity that grew over time as people flocked to the big city and space decreased. The flexibility and constant work on each transport system and the insane $200 billion annual budget for Japanese
That's a lot of dollars
from 2013 to 2023, which is 40% of their entire GDP, by the way, make Tokyo a brilliantly built city. But it didn't get there overnight.
Which is funny, because I don't know if it's as a percentage of our GDP, but I know that our discretionary budget, 50% of it, or more than 50% of it, goes to the fucking defense budget. Lamau. Obviously, those are different metrics, GDP and the discretionary budget of the state. But Jesus Christ. Can you imagine if we put more money into fucking infrastructure? Jesus.
After the end of World War II, Japan, like many other countries, had to rebuild its nation. However, Japan didn't have access to oil reserves and expensive auto transport systems, which led to the auto boom in countries like the United States.
No.
So the Japanese government, in collaboration with private companies, invested in
squandered
railway lines instead in an attempt to connect Tokyo's more suburban areas with the city center. Combine this with the historically lower income of Japanese households, and the demand for solid public transit grew. This completely left the car as a means of transport in the dust. Hence, it's no wonder the average car ownership per household in Tokyo is 0.56, which is shockingly
How could you own
low
half
for
a car?
large urban area, in comparison to a city like Chicago that has a car ownership rate of 1.12 per household. It makes it so there's no competition when comparing cars with the subway, bus, or train. And that's a good thing, because public transit in Tokyo is objectively the superior option to a car-based city. Even if one did want to make a swing at using a car to get around, they better have a lot of free time, because a train or subway will get you to your destination much faster than a car.
Also, even if it took a little bit longer to be on the train or on a bus, you know that big meme that a lot of fucking tech bros talk about? Like, oh, if we had autonomous cars, well, you could do emails while you're in the car because you wouldn't have to drive. If we had self-driving cars, you could do work while in the car. You could do that on a fucking train because you're not driving, dumbass. You could do that on a bus. But when you're driving and when you're forced to drive, you can't do a goddamn thing but drive, and it's a fucking waste of time. If you wanted to, you could do recreation or work while on the goddamn train. In transit, efficient, pog.
Transit vehicles run on a strict time crunch, operating within a minute of expected arrival or departure time. They're also super fast, moving at 1.5 times the speed of a car that's limited by speed restrictions, traffic, and unpredictable roadblocks. Now, you might be thinking that Tokyo's subway and rail systems are simply too technologically advanced to be compared to cities like New York.
What does that even mean?
What Japan is doing is pretty basic. It's not alien technology, it's just common sense.
Those goddamn aliens.
I mean, look at this train from a terminal.
They helped the Japanese people. They came down from UFOs,
Chicago.
Gave them secret
tech. What about this subway in Shinjuku paired against this one in New York? They look alike. The difference lies in what they are connected to, as well as the maintenance that these systems are taking through.
And the will.
See, most of Tokyo stations are empty through the night, even the one in Shinjuku, which makes it the perfect time to do the mandatory nightly inspection. Yep, you have me right, the subway tunnels and tracks are checked every night.
You want to know the people that fucking do that job? That's a lot of jobs. You gotta have a lot of people that can do that. Theoretically, hopefully, ideally, those people are paid very well. I don't know if that's actually the case in Japan, but that could be a very good paying job. And in a country like the US, when we're always fucking jacking ourselves off over the fact that jobs have been created, quite a few jobs, really. It's an important one too, because it keeps the fucking country running.
Minor damages are fixed, while major ones are reported and alternative routes are chosen. But Tokyo goes even further than this, by doing a thorough dismantling and inspection of all their train cars every 4 years.
Insanity.
The cars are stripped down by hand, and all parts are tested for malfunction before they're cleaned and put back together. It's a highly coordinated effort that ensures accidents along these stations, tunnels and railways are kept to a minimum, and unforeseen damages that cause downtimes are therefore virtually non-existent. Oh, and let me just quickly mention the Shinkansen, Tokyo's bullet train, that has a maximum operating speed of 320 kilometers per hour, making trips out of Tokyo a breeze. A commuter could board a Shinkansen in Tokyo and arrive at the Shin-Amori station in northern Japan in just 3 hours and 20 minutes.
And you know what you could do while on the train? Vibe. Because one, you're not a billion miles in the air. So you're not cramped into a metal tube flying through the air. You might be cramped, but you're in a metal tube going along the ground. And there could be cool things to look out the window instead of just fucking nothing. Because if you're above the clouds, then maybe you can see the clouds and the lights out, but...
For Amtrak's Akita train, which is currently the fastest train in the United States. And it does the same distance of 713 kilometers from Boston to Washington in 7 hours. So all in all, Tokyo is really well designed and connected in an efficient way. And while it can look chaotic sometimes from an outside perspective, like when you watch videos of their crosswalks, it's really the exact opposite. Everything is well thought out down to the smallest of details, and everything seems so coordinated. But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next one.
Pretty cool. pretty neat. I mean, like, imagine taking an overnight train and you just vibe, and then you sleep, and then you wake up and you're in a new place. Yeah, Katsuna, and you can't do that on a fucking plane. There's not enough space unless you're in, like, super money zone seats. Trains are literally just better than planes. Unless you're going across the fucking water. Essentially, I think the best way to look at it is that all of these transportation options are tools. And for some reason, the United States has prioritized using the tools in exactly the wrong way, and it's made everything worse. Because, like, an airplane is a tool, and to go across the goddamn Pacific or Atlantic Ocean is a pretty good use for a train, or for a fucking plane, and you should do that. However, if you're traveling across, let's say, a stretch of land, well, then a train might be better. Because depending on what the hell kind of train you're on, if you have good infrastructure like a bullet train, you're gonna get to where you're going pretty goddamn quick, and it's more comfy than a goddamn plane. Planes fucking suck, especially if you're poor. But the United States is allergic to trains, so... because the fucking train industry has been privatized and gutted to shit. Apparently Amtrak was designed to fail, but somehow it survived in spite of that, so we still have it. I'm pretty sure most fucking Americans have never seen a train. Except for, like, ones carrying freight at the random train crossing that they have around them in their commute while they're in their goddamn car. And the trains piss people off, too. Like, waiting at a fucking train stop in your car because you have to drive a car fucking sucks. Because it's like, well, shit. Now I have to wait here until this choo-choo-ass motherfucker and its 18 billion train cars comes by. If you weren't in a goddamn car, if you were in the train instead, and that train is bringing people around, you really wouldn't have to worry about that, would you? Is an optimistic nihilism contradicting? No. To my knowledge, nihilism is usually defined as believing that life has no meaning, but you can certainly still be optimistic with that point of view. I'm simplifying, obviously. Like, you can acknowledge that in your worldview, life has no meaning, and also acknowledge that we should fight as hard as we can to make that, albeit meaningless life, as good as it possibly can be. Because, like, if life doesn't have much meaning, and this is the only life you have, if you don't believe in, like, an afterlife or whatever, then you should want to fight to make it as good as it can be. Not only for you, but, you know, other human beings. Like, essentially, like, you can acknowledge that the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but you could also want to fight like hell to stop the bleeding as much as you can. So, like, you could think that life has no meaning, and then be doomer about it. Be pessimistic about it, and be like, oh, well, oh, what the fuck does it matter that the world's going to shit? The world has no meaning. Life is pointless. Or you could acknowledge that it has no meaning and be optimistic about the prospects of making that life as good as it can be for you and everyone around you. Something like that. Here, since we're on the topic, how about we look at the other side of the coin? The best country in the world for drivers, not just bikes. A banger video that I've already seen, and we'll watch it again. So if you drivers out there, if you car enthusiasts really want a good drive.
The Netherlands is a great place if you don't want to drive. There are lots of areas that are pedestrianized and nearly car-free. Trains are so pervasive and frequent that they work almost like a countrywide metro system. Plus, rail stations have giant bicycle parking garages and high-quality public transit connections to get you to your final destination. And there are bicycle paths almost everywhere. In many cases, cyclists can take the fastest and most direct route to where they're going, while drivers need to take the long way around.
Cocked.
I get a lot of comments on this channel by people who say that they love cars and would hate to live somewhere like this. But what they don't realize is that driving is awesome in the Netherlands. This summer, I traveled to Canada to visit family, and I did a lot of driving while I was there.
Oh, no.
After almost 2 years away, it was a real shock to go from the comfortable, civilized driving experience.
Look at that! Can you imagine this being part of your daily commute? There's all these trees, it's very green, It's just a straight up road. Like, you don't have to worry about people coming in and out of driveways and shit. You're just driving in a line.
Driving
it's
in
pretty.
Canada. It made me appreciate how good we have it here.
But where the fuck are you going to put a tree here? In the median? Maybe, but that means you would have to squeeze the road a little bit more, and we can't have that. Why aren't there fucking trees on the side here? Well, I don't fucking know. It's because we hate people who walk and don't want to give them coverage from the goddamn sun and wind.
I'm not the only one who thinks this
Bastards.
either. Take, for example, the YouTube channel CALLOUT, an American and self-professed car guy who lives in Amsterdam and has made several videos about how much he prefers driving in the Netherlands compared to places like Toronto or his home state of Florida.
Based.
And yet, Florida is a state that is infamous for how car-centric it is, and how hostile it is for pedestrians and cyclists.
And how insane the drivers
It should
are.
be a great place to drive, but it's not. Further proof is available from Waze, who used to collect data from their platform to determine a driver satisfaction index each year. And they determined that the Netherlands was the best country in the world to be a driver.
Easy clap.
This
The
doesn't
Dutch
surprise
stay
me at
winning,
all.
apparently.
Driving in the Netherlands is so pleasant. The infrastructure is of high quality, and it's in great condition. And in general, traffic is pretty light and flows pretty smoothly.
Yeah, shocker, really. You don't have to fucking come across traffic jams and all manner of cars on the road if people are incentivized not to drive and less people are driving and more people are taking buses, trains, and walking and cycling. It's almost like the solution to bad car traffic is to make it so that there's less cars on the road. And you can make it so there's less cars on the road if you provide for people alternatives that are safe and efficient, like every other fucking civilized country does.
Sure, there's traffic in rush hour, but rush hour
North
is
America
still about
sucks
an
for
hour.
it.
It's not a near constant traffic jam spread throughout the day like in most US and Canadian cities. It's more like a traffic...
So, by the way, the reason why this is the case is because a lot of cities in places in Europe and whatnot are a lot older, right? The reason why Americans will take a trip to fucking Italy or whatever, and like there's so many shops and like houses and mixed zoning, and like you could just walk anywhere, you don't need a car or whatever, is because these cities were literally built around the idea that cars aren't the way that people are primarily moving around, because they were built before cars were a thing. So roads are smaller, people walk and bike everywhere, because for a while that's all you could goddamn do. Or take a train. Then cars happened, and everything went to shit. But the places that maintained their good non-car infrastructure benefited from the fact that they were made and haven't been soiled by automobiles.
And there are clever approaches to temporary traffic conditions on the highway, such as these rush hour lanes that open when necessary, and changing speed limits based on congestion because drivers traveling slower have less space between cars and make
Can you
better...
imagine that? There's not, in some places, there aren't even set speed limits. The speed limits change depending on what's necessary. The fuck? Not the arbitrary ass speed limits we have in the States. Jesus Christ.
It blows my mind that driving out of town on a long weekend doesn't involve getting stuck in soul-crushing traffic, like it does in almost every other city I've lived in. You'll see lots of caravans and bicycles attached to cars, but otherwise, it's hardly any different than a regular day. I've lived in cities that have a quarter the population of Amsterdam, yet traffic in them is considerably worse. This all comes down to the fundamental truth. There's no solution to traffic congestion except viable alternatives to driving.
Yeah, that's what I
And
said.
most Dutch cities have viable alternatives to driving for many trips, which reduces the number of cars on the road.
Wow! Like, I don't know how this is a rough concept for people to understand. Obviously, like, if you've never even thought about it, then maybe. One more lane, bro. Please trust me. But what the fuck? If you make it so people don't have to drive, then there's less cars on the road. Then that means traffic's not as bad. Hello? It's like, it's literally 1-to-1.
In many Dutch cities, taking a bicycle is often the fastest way to get somewhere, because cyclists can usually take the shortest and most direct route, while drivers need to take the long way around.
Get fucked.
You might think that this is bad for drivers, but it's not. Because if cycling wasn't faster, many of these people would be in cars, and the streets would be so clogged with traffic that the direct route would be even slower than the indirect route is today.
Shocking.
In fact, this was the case in Amsterdam in the 1970s. It may seem counterintuitive, but designing to prioritize walking, cycling, and public transit actually works out better for drivers.
So it might seem counterintuitive if you've been fed indoctrination and propaganda and your lived experience in the USA is just dog shit car infrastructure. But like, if you think about it for more than a couple seconds, I feel like that makes so much goddamn sense. What the fuck?
Surprisingly, the Dutch cities that are the most car-centric also have the worst traffic.
Wow.
One of the things that makes driving here particularly pleasant is the fact that the traffic lights are smarter, so you end up waiting a lot less.
This shit is insane to me. This shit is fucking nuts to me. What you're about to witness, hold on to your fucking hats, chat. When I'm driving into Seattle, I am constantly having to stop at red light after red light after red light. It's very rare that I get a consistent drive straight to where I need to go because I'm in a city and I shouldn't be driving. Look at this shit.
I made a video about traffic lights from the point of view of cyclists and pedestrians, but they work better for drivers too. Almost every traffic light in the Netherlands has multiple detection loops.
What?
One at the stop line, like in many other countries, but also at least one farther back.
No way.
This junction has 3 of them. This allows the traffic control system to intelligently schedule the stoplights based on the traffic detected from each direction.
What?
For example, you will very often see the traffic light turn red just as the last car passes the stop line.
Insanity.
This is because the control system uses the farther detection loop to determine that there isn't another car approaching, so it's safe to change the light to red early and let another direction go while there's a gap in traffic. It also works to turn a light green early if it detects your car or bike is approaching when it's safe to stop traffic in other directions.
Shocking.
Another difference is that in
I hate
the
this
US
country.
and Canada, traffic lights are stupid and go all green in one direction, followed by all green in the other
It's so
direction.
fucking stupid.
But here in the Netherlands, traffic lights work in multiple phases, so there are many different combinations possible for things like dedicated right turns and left turns simultaneously. This not only speeds up waiting times at traffic lights, it also makes turning much less dangerous and
Yup.
stressful because when you have a green arrow, you're almost always clear to turn. In particular, the left turn across traffic on a strode is one of the most dangerous and stressful driving maneuvers in
And fucking insane. Hello? Yes, let me just drive past oncoming traffic with no safeguards. I just have to wait until it's clear and then pray to God. Sure, man.
I almost never need to perform a turn like this in the Netherlands. Speaking of stroads, there are almost none in the Netherlands, as I've talked about in previous videos.
For those of you who don't know, I don't know if he goes into this, but stroads is a term used to describe the melding of a street and a road. So a street is supposed to be a destination where you go and there's shops and fucking houses and shit, and you're not really supposed to use a car there except for when you're returning home, let's say. Or like if you're making a delivery. That's a street. It's a place you're supposed to stop, like that's the end destination. A road is supposed to be a place exclusively for cars where you're supposed to go from point A to point B. So like you think of like a highway, right? Highways are like the closest things to dedicated roads we have in the United States because most places are fucking stroads. So stroads are the melding of both of those, where you'll have destinations also connected to a fucking road, meaning that there's a variety of ways that cars have to go into and come out of those destinations connected to the road, which just causes a bunch of fucking unnecessary complexity for the cars on the road. It also makes fucking life harder for people biking, walking, etc. because it makes the roads wider, which makes people have to be in the way of traffic longer. It makes the infrastructure worse generally because you need wider roads to accommodate more cars, and also the inlets and outlets of the destinations on the side of it. It also usually makes it so that these places are just fucking baking in the sun because the wider a road gets, the less amount of tree cover you can have on the sides of it, which is one, bad for pedestrians on the side of the road because they're just in the sun marinating. And it's bad for the fucking environment because asphalt, I think, it traps a lot of heat or some shit like that. Essentially, it's better to keep asphalt covered in the shade than in direct sunlight, but it's always in direct sunlight on a fucking strode. Contributes to heat islands and re-radiation at night, yeah. It's just all bad. It's bad in every single conceivable way.
This means that when you're on a road, there are very few side streets, driveways, or crossings to slow you down. This has so many benefits that it's hard to list them all. In general, the lack of stroads keeps traffic moving smoothly and, even if the speed limit is lower, your average speed is much higher because there are fewer cars merging in and out and fewer traffic lights.
You get to where you need to go
This is
faster.
something that people don't appreciate enough. Stroads have so many driveways and side streets that require merging into high-speed traffic that some driveways inevitably get traffic buildups from people trying to exit. The solution is to install a traffic light, which is why there are so many traffic lights in most North American cities.
Seattle is so bad in some places.
Book, Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, author Chuck Marohn measured his average speed at rush hour and found that it was about 16 kilometers per hour. Actually, it was an average of less than 10 miles per hour, but I'm converting everything to metric here because imperial units are stupid.
Get fucked.
So,
I also agree.
Despite the roads having a speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour or more, his average speed was less than 16 because of all the traffic lights.
Ever since school.
And this was in a tiny town of only 14,000 people. Incidentally, 16 kilometers an hour is the average speed of a cyclist in Amsterdam, because bicycle routes are designed to avoid traffic lights and to keep cyclists
Look at this
moving.
shit. There's a dedicated route for bicycles that cars are not allowed to go on. So you can walk on the side, which is safer for pedestrians walking, because bikes aren't gonna fucking end your shit as easily, at least. I'm sure some people have died from a bicycle collision, but I imagine it's incredibly rare compared to cars. 2, it looks nicer generally because it's less space required, so you can put amenities and shit on the side. And 3, it's a fucking dedicated lane for bikes, so it's safer because you don't gotta drive next to goddamn cars. Like, I've accidentally, okay? I didn't mean it. I have repented. I have been driving in places where there is not infrastructure at all for cyclists, and I have absolutely hated the cyclists that I've encountered while I was in my car, but it's not even their fault. Like, you're blaming the victims of a problem. The fact that being in a car and having a cyclist next to you fucking sucks because like one wrong move and their head is smashed under your tire like a fucking melon is not because of the fact that they're bicycling. It's because of the fact that the infrastructure and the state don't make it easier for people to bicycle and safer for people to bike. If it was safer for them to bike, they wouldn't be in your goddamn way. It's so easy. It's so easy to think of these things. But cars have infected this country. It's a fucking plague.
This really shows you how backwards American traffic engineering is.
Well, yeah, but you wouldn't have to deal with the negatives of the cyclists if you never had to encounter them while you were in a car. Like, under this system, the only time you're in a car and you have to encounter a bicycle is if you're in a place where cars aren't usually supposed to be long term. Like if you're on a street and you're in there for a very brief period of time.
The speed of a car in a small town in the US is the same as a bicycle in the largest and busiest city.
We need to listen to that again. Listen to this insane bullshit. Are you ready? This is communist propaganda. There's no way this could be real. This is fake. It's fake news. They're trying to trans your kids. They're trying to bring communism to the States.
See how backwards American traffic engineering is when the average speed of a car in a small town in the US is the same as a bicycle in the largest and busiest city in the Netherlands.
And it's healthier for you and the environment. Like, come on.
I had the same experience when driving in my hometown this summer. I was constantly sitting at red lights when I was driving simply because there are so many of them.
It's so cringe.
And if there aren't traffic lights, there are stop signs.
People will complain about this all the goddamn time. Drivers are notorious for being like, oh my god, I hate sitting in traffic. I hate sitting at these red lights. It's always red lights. I'm hitting every single goddamn red light today. This fucking sucks. You know who doesn't hit red lights? As often, anyway. Fucking people who are walking. People on a train. I'm sure there is some edge case where there's some equivalent to a red light for a train, but I imagine that's like absurd, like externalities, where like a train has to stop. The entire design of a train is that it doesn't until it gets to its destination.
Instead of designing proper traffic calming, North American traffic engineers just put stop signs everywhere to slow down drivers.
Cringe.
I already made a previous video about why I hate stop signs and why they shouldn't be required at all, especially for cyclists. But yeah, it's so nice to drive through the Netherlands and not see any stop signs at all. And the very, very, very few times you see one, it's actually necessary.
Shocking.
Of course, there are many intersections with roundabouts too, which is even better.
Roundabout.
Then there's almost no waiting at all and traffic flows even more efficiently. Though roundabouts can get backed up if there's too much car traffic, so they don't work everywhere. Of course, the Dutch have a solution for that too, which is turbo roundabouts, but they deserve their own video someday.
So this is really funny. I forget who I was watching. It might have been Not Just Bikes. It might have been, actually no. It was some fucking corporate ass YouTube channel. I don't even remember what the fucking name was. It doesn't matter. They were talking about roundabouts. And The first time I ever encountered a roundabout, because they were none, where I lived in Jersey, there are literally no roundabouts. I have never had to learn about them. I have never had to go through them. I was not taught about them. They were not on the driving test. They were not on the road test either. The first time I encountered one was in some place in Pennsylvania, and I had no fucking idea what I was doing, and that was a trash situation. I did not have a good time. Turns out, roundabouts are insanely good for traffic flow, and once you understand how to use them, they're actually better than traffic lights. So the main reason why a lot of people don't like roundabouts is that in the very few places that they exist, people don't know what the fuck they're doing, and it's very stressful. And then that's the only experience you have, so that's how you feel about all of them. Some bullshit.
Take a road with a lower maximum speed limit if that road design means that I achieve a higher average speed, and that is exactly what I experience driving in the Netherlands. I made a video about speed limits recently, but what's relevant here is that speed limits in the Netherlands mostly make sense. Different streets with different speed limits are designed differently, so you rarely need to check your speed.
This is also going to blow your mind, okay? If you've never watched a video like this, chat, the next time you go driving or walking or bicycling, you're going to look at the street differently. Your third eye is going to open, and the world will expand around you in ways that I can't even describe. Listen to this shit. The idea of designing a street to moderate the speed that people will be going on it. Listen.
Different streets with different speed limits are designed differently, so you rarely need to check your speed. The speed that feels right on a given street is usually the correct one.
What? When I'm driving in America, I am constantly checking to see what the goddamn speed limit is, because if I'm like 7 over, I just don't want a cop on my ass. So I'm constantly looking, because who the fuck knows what it could be? It could be anything. It can go from 60 to 40 in like 1,000 feet, for all I know.
When I was driving in my hometown this summer, I was constantly needing to check what the speed limit was, because everything is designed like a giant strode. Yet the speed limit could be anywhere from 40 kilometers an hour to 80 kilometers an hour with no difference in road design. Another factor that makes driving in the Netherlands less stressful is that the drivers themselves are better. There are many aspects of this, such as stricter licensing requirements, but I believe the single most important factor is that in most Dutch cities, there are viable alternatives to—
Oh damn, I don't think he goes into, in this video, how certain roads are designed and how that changes how you drive on them. Essentially, the take is this. If you give a car more room, people are more likely to go faster. If you give a car less room, people are more likely to go slower. So you'll experience this, right? When you're on the highway, you're fucking zooming. You're going the speed limit, which is usually 60 miles per hour, or you're going like 70, 80 or more because you can, because they're designed for high speed travel. But if, God forbid, you ever go along a goddamn road that has roadside parking on either side, and it essentially turns into a one-lane road, you know those roads where you're driving in and another car comes your way, so one of you have to back up or go into a parking spot really quickly so that one person can go through? You know how fucking fast you go through that? Not at all. You're taking your time going through that shit because you don't want your car to get banged up with the other cars next to it. If you design smaller roads where it's applicable, people will drive slower. And not only that, but these smaller roads can have more tree cover. It can look prettier, and they're easier to maintain by the state. It's easier to fix the roads if there isn't that much surface area. It's easier to maintain them, which means less potholes, which means smoother driving, which means less maintenance for your goddamn car. There are so many benefits. It's insanity.
This means that the only people who are driving are those people who want to drive or those people who need to drive. A Dutch city can make many trips by walking, cycling, or public transit.
No way.
Even if somebody drives to work, they may still get their grocery shopping by bicycle, walk to a doctor's appointment, or take public transportation to a football game.
There are some places I can walk to. I won't say much, obviously, because that's, you know, a breach of security. But there are some places where I live where I can walk to that where I used to live, I would have to drive. And the quality of life increase, being able to walk to a place instead of where I would normally have to drive to it, is fucking insane. It's so nice.
In particular, shopping by bicycle or by walking is a very low-stress activity, and it's usually done when you're on the way home from somewhere else, so it doesn't even feel like a chore. In car-dependent places, you need to drive for everything, so even the most trivial of errands like buying a bag of milk feels like a trip.
And
Not only
you have to sit in fucking traffic sometimes. If you want to go to the goddamn grocery store, you have to hit a bunch of red lights, and then you just have to sit in traffic sometimes when you're trying to pick up goddamn ramen and soda, or whatever the fuck it is you're eating. I don't know what you guys are up to. Instead of just being able to bike or walk to pick that shit up.
does this result in a huge amount of excess cars on the road, contributing to more traffic, it also just sucks to do. It sucks to have to get in your car and drive in traffic to do normal everyday tasks like going to an appointment or feeding your family.
Or even
Some people
fucking dick appointments, man. If you got like a sexy person that you're trying to meet up with, you gotta drive 1,000,000 miles to get to where they're at? What the fuck? And then what can you do? Then you have to drive somewhere else to go hang out and do shit instead of walk around a nice little town. I don't know, go to a goddamn park and chill out, then hit up the cinema and watch a movie, and then go home with your fucking hot juicy. Everything is better.
People may like cars, but driving in this traffic is not fun. So when you get a whole city of people who are forced to do something that sucks every single day, you get a lot of pissed off people on the road.
No way.
That's not to say that there are no assholes on the road here in the Netherlands. I mean, they
Also, there are just people who should not be driving. There are people who have massive anxiety when it comes to driving, and that's valid. It's a scary activity, especially in the States where driving is fucking dog shit. Those people should not have to drive. I'm pretty sure if they had the option, they wouldn't, because they want to subject themselves to an anxiety attack every time they have to go and fucking pick up a goddamn gallon of milk. Like, if they could bike or walk or take the bus instead, I'm pretty sure people like that would do that. People like that are a lot less safe on the road because they're more unpredictable, because they're scared of everything else around them on the road, and they become potentially a vector for complications. If they weren't on the road, they'd be better, and the other people who are okay with being on the road would be better as well. Also, there are just people who are fucking bad drivers. And if you didn't have to drive, well, then there'd be less bad drivers, because if it's literally easier to get around without having to drive, which is expensive, first of all, to have to own a car, if it's easier to get around without having one, well, then the majority of the people, like he says, that are going to be on the road want to be there, and therefore are going to be more likely to know what the fuck they're doing.
But there simply isn't the same level of angry, distracted, or bored drivers that you have to contend with in a car-dependent city. This contributes so much to making the driving experience more pleasant here, and this is even more noticeable when walking or cycling because you're not dealing with hyper-aggressive impatient jerks every time you encounter a car. Of course, it also helps that conflicts between drivers and cyclists are kept to a minimum in the Netherlands, either with protected bicycle paths or by providing totally separate routes for bicycles.
Insanity.
This also makes it less stressful to drive because despite there being so many cyclists in the Netherlands, I find it much easier to avoid people on bicycles when I'm driving. Most people want to avoid hitting pedestrians and cyclists unless you're a pickup driver in Houston or something. So having fewer points of conflict with people outside of cars makes driving easier. Another thing that makes driving great in the Netherlands is that the road infrastructure is of extremely high quality and it's exquisitely maintained.
I wonder why that is.
Seriously, I've been living in the Netherlands for 3 years now, and this is the only bad pothole I've ever seen.
I have
So
experienced so many
notable that I went home
potholes
to get my
living in
camera
New
to film
Jersey.
it. This blows my mind. There's a lot of myths about where potholes come from, but when you boil it all down, they're caused by two things: lots of heavy vehicles and insufficient maintenance. The formation of potholes can be sped up a lot by freeze-thaw cycles, but this only happens if water is allowed to enter cracks in the asphalt or if there is poor drainage of the road. If cracks are filled promptly and water is not allowed to penetrate, then potholes are much less likely to form. Look at any list online of the worst roads in America and you'll see sunny places like Honolulu, Los Angeles, and Baton Rouge right alongside New York, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. The fact is, when your city is built only for cars and trucks, you're going to have a lot more car and truck traffic. And as Strong Towns has taught us, if your city is made up of sprawling car-dependent infrastructure, then it's not capable of financially sustaining itself.
True. Costs
This
a lot
is
of money.
ultimately the real reason why the roads are in such poor condition in many other cities. There's just
there's too many of
much
them.
asphalt and stormwater management infrastructure per person to properly maintain it all. This leads to the sad irony.
It's literally economically
Designing your city only
non-feasible.
for cars makes the roads worse for drivers.
Like for conservatives, right? For right-wingers who care so deeply about the economy, it is literally a insane drain on the economy to have your major urban centers, which, by the way, produce the majority of tax revenues for the state and GDP growth, to be majority car dependent and have all these goddamn roads around. It's literally economically non-viable, especially suburbs. Jesus fucking Christ.
And then there's the issue of tax. Drivers simply do not pay the full cost of the roads, period. This is especially true in the United States, where the federal
Gas
tax has
taxes.
been the same since
Gas
1993
prices,
at
Biden.
18.4 cents per gallon.
You gotta
while
press
the number
the
of miles of
gas
asphalt
lower
and
price
construction costs
button.
have skyrocketed. But that's a larger topic that deserves its own video someday. And finally, driving in the Netherlands just looks nicer too. You wouldn't think it makes a big difference, but it does. It's so much nicer to
I don't
drive
know.
along a road.
Maybe it's just for the narrative. I don't know. What about, you wouldn't think it makes a big difference. People like looking at and being in places that look nice. It's a fact of life. People like to look at cool trees. People like to look at nice flowers. People like to look at well-maintained infrastructure. It's a fact of life. People love looking at things that look good. That's why they watch me.
Then a strode like this.
God damn it. This is my home. Well, not this one, but Jesus Christ. Look at the difference. Just look at it. I know you're trying to look away. I know you pretend you don't see it because you live in America and you're trying not to feel even worse about the sorry state your country's in. But holy fuck, what a world of difference. Makes you want to cry. Also, as far as I'm aware, Canadian infrastructure is better than the US, like generally speaking. So like even if this is a video from Canada, it can be a lot worse in the States. Are like 80% of roads and bridges in dire need of being rebuilt? Well, yeah, there's like a bunch of engineers. There's a group that rates the infrastructure of a variety of fucking countries. The something of engineers. I forget what they're called. But anyway, the United States gets a grade of like D or D minus, and it's the wealthiest country in the world. It's so bad. And it's because we're incredibly inefficient. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers? Yeah, something like that. It's because U.S. infrastructure is incredibly inefficient, economically, and in almost literally every other metric. Except for, it's pretty efficient for automobile manufacturer profit margins. That's cool.
This is like the origin of the parkway concept. Just as people like taking walks in parks, mid-century traffic engineers thought
Not
that
me,
people
brother.
would enjoy going on
Parks
drives
are goddamn
along parkways.
communism.
So many parkways were created in the US and Canada as a place for leisure driving.
What are you supposed
Of
to do in a
course, due to-
park? You're supposed to read theory. You're supposed to organize. The hell are you doing in a park? That's some communist bullshit. What, are you supposed to get together and hug a tree with your hippie friends? Come
To
on.
induce demand, those parkways became more
You know,
like
fuck a
parking
tree.
lots. Trust me, I did not enjoy taking the Don Valley Parkway to work every day. I don't particularly like cars, and I treat them like any other kind of tool. Car enthusiasts are really bizarre to me because it's like being a power saw enthusiast. I mean, yeah, they're pretty cool, but I really don't care about them unless I need to cut some wood. Now, power washers, on the other hand, are something I could get into. So if the Netherlands can make someone like me appreciate driving, then it's really impressive. Though I must admit that my favorite part of driving in the Netherlands is when I park the car.
It's an
get
electric
back on my
ass
bike.
liberal vehicle.
Because what's even better than driving in the Netherlands is cycling here.
This
I'd
entire
like to thank my
channel is a
supporters on
flex,
Patreon
and
who
I'm
pay me
pissed.
to extol my love of driving. If you'd like to support the channel and get access to bonus videos, visit patreon.com/notjustbikes.
Not Just Bikes is also one of like the premier tourist advertisements for Amsterdam, and he's not even trying to be, as far as I know. Perhaps we should follow the money. Anyway, I don't know, man. Cars are cringe. I have been based and anti-car pilled recently. Like, unironically, these kinds of videos should probably be mandatory viewing at school. Like, we need to develop a generation of car haters. It's not actually true because the infrastructure development we're talking about, it literally makes it better for cars too. We need to fucking cultivate a generation of car-dependent infrastructure haters so that we can fucking hopefully pressure the goddamn people in power to make these developments that are so desperately needed. Car reform theory. That would be the argument, wouldn't it? Well, the general argument for the right is, ooh, cars are freedom or whatever. They're trying to take your freedom away, brother. That's critical race in theory. True. So that's probably, yeah, that would be the retort, I suppose. It'd be some stupid ass bullshit like, ooh, you want to make us into communism, brother. Believe me. Trump has never said brother like that. That's weird as hell. Anyway, believe me, folks, they want to make you sit on a train so that they can play postmodern neo-Marxist theory over the loudspeaker. Believe me, folks, and you're locked in there for what? An hour? 2 hours? And you gotta listen to it? They're playing Conquest of Bread audiobooks over the intercom when they're really trying to conquest your head, folks. You gotta be a free thinker. You gotta be on the road in a car. You know, my mom took the last driving class offered in public school back in the 70s. You mean like the driving test? Oh, class, not even the test. The school I went to, in health class, there was like a period of time, I think for junior year students, or sophomore year, I forget. I think it might have been sophomore year, where you could take so there was like a course where they would teach you about, there was a driver's ed course. And there was also the opportunity to take a test, literally the written driver's test, in school. And if you passed it, that would count at the DMV for when you take your driving test. It's kind of cool, I suppose. Couldn't take the driving test at school, though, of course. Oh, yeah, Bill. Yeah, I failed the written driver's test in my school by like 5 or 10 points because I slept through the goddamn class like an asshole. And I could have stayed after one day and retaken it, but I didn't because I wanted to play League of Legends because I was addicted, like literally addicted. Not even a joke. It was fucked up. Almost ruined my life. So I ended up getting my my driver's license super late and had to depend on a bunch of other people for driving me around. Can you imagine if I could have just taken a goddamn bus, train, or bicycle instead, or walked? But no, I needed a goddamn car to get everywhere. So because I didn't have one, I had to inconvenience everybody else constantly to get to work. Nice, Chili. Well, yeah, so I could have gotten my, like I could have passed the written test and had that been done, and I just had to do the driving test after. I could have done that in like my sophomore year of high school, I think. But I ended up waiting until I was like 21 or something. Or 20. I think I waited until I was 20. And then eventually I just took the test at the DMV, passed it at like record-breaking speeds. And then I took the driving test and also passed it first try. It was insanely easy. Which is probably not a good thing. Because it being too easy to get a license produces worse drivers. Except, you know, you can't make it too hard to get a license because people literally need a car to survive. Bro, my driving test instructor looked like goddamn Eric Andre. I'm not even joking. I asked him if he knew who Eric Andre was, and he said no. So I'm pretty sure it was actually Eric Andre. And I was in a bit. Nothing crazy happened to me, though, so I must have been part of the bit where they pretend to be like an actual driver for a little bit, and then the next person was the victim. He looked exactly like Eric Andre. Anyway. Could I make a segment out of that? I feel like I could. This video's CONURE CALLOUT is Neptune1312. Thank you so much for being braver than our troops and for the support, and also braver than the cops. If you would like to be the next CONURE CALLOUT, all you gotta do is follow me on Twitter at CONURECC, retweet my video links when they go live. Remember to subscribe to the channel, all notifications on, but hit the button, appreciate that as well. Leave a like if you like, comment something cool down below, and generally be a cool person because you're watching me, so you must be, or at least on the path to being one.
So continue on that path, or continue to improve upon the building blocks that you've already constructed, and have a wonderful rest of the time that you have to spend doing whatever it is that you intend to do.